Good morning. I'm just really, really excited to be here, but mostly it is my privilege and great pleasure to introduce Michael Eselun. I'm going to read off my phone from his website. How technically savvy is that? My kids would be really proud. Um, and his website, which is michaeleselun.com, is absolutely wonderful. There's a great TED Talk that he just gave that's on there, about a 15-minute talk, and it's also fabulous. But Michael Eselun is an inspirational speaker, and right now he's serving as the chaplain at the Sims-Mann UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. He is somewhat unusual in that he is neither an ordained minister nor particularly religious in any conventional way. The seed was planted for his chaplaincy during volunteer hospice work during the peak of the AIDS crisis. He speaks from the place where all of us find ourselves at one time or another, in the place of the outsider, in the margins, misunderstood, isolated, abandoned, perhaps doubting long-held beliefs, and now holding more questions than answers. His speaking style, you're in for a real treat, is highly entertaining given the heavy topics he tackles. Audiences find themselves laughing, crying, and awed by the poignant connections that he makes. And he also has a lot of past lives. He was a dancer, wonderful dancer. It still dances, still teaches dance on occasion. He had his own interior design business, and he now lives with his husband, Scott, in West Hollywood. And now a little bit about me, 10 seconds. What he means to me is that Polly and I lost a brother 34 years ago. And what Michael has been the most amazing older brother, 3.5 months, that's all, older brother to me. He's taught me more than any other person about what it means to be a human being, what it means to be present with another person during difficult times. And it is just my great pleasure and joy to introduce Michael Eselun.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful welcome, and thank you so much for welcoming me here today. One thing that Jackie didn't mention is that I think for the primary reason I'm here is I'm also a co-founder of an organization in Los Angeles called GLIDE, Gays and Lesbians Initiating Dialogue for Equality. We're a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization, and our mission, our purpose as an organization is to combat homophobia, plain and simple. We've been doing that for over 20 years. We're the go-to resource for LA Unified School District, for the Simon Wiesenthal Center, the Museum of Tolerance. Been doing that for 20 years, reaching over 150,000 people in the LA area. So I think that's probably the avenue that brought me here. I imagine most of you, maybe some of you do, some of you don't know, that June next month is Gay Pride Month. We might know that, but maybe we don't know why it is that it's Gay Pride Month. And it's kind of an auspicious one next month because it's the 45th anniversary of what's called the Stonewall Rebellion in New York City, in Greenwich Village. The Stonewall Inn was a gay bar, not a particularly nice one, owned by the mob, frequented by hustlers and folks that maybe wouldn't be living in Carroll County. And it has a mythic kind of place in LGBT history because it's the first time that the gay community kind of struck back. It was quite the custom for NYPD and police departments all over to raid gay bars, to threaten the patrons, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a point in time, and some say that there's a conflation there with the death of Judy Garland, which happened just a week before, and this was right on the heels of her funeral, and there was this huge outpouring, masses of people at her funeral. Going to the bar, the police raided the bar, and the patrons struck back. And the riot went on for 2 days, and it's considered the beginning of the modern gay rights movement. So you will often see gay community groups and LGBT groups all over the world really with Stonewall in their title. And so that's what that's about, and it's 45 years ago next month. Some people might say, well, why do we need a gay pride parade? We don't have a heterosexual parade and so forth. I get that question a lot. Maybe some of you have heard it. We tend to have pride parades and festivals for all kinds of marginalized groups because people have been marginalized and oppressed by the dominant culture. And people are oppressed and marginalized because people are fearful And what are they fearful of? The loss, I would say, of power, of access to privilege and station in life. And I think that fear is the key to this entire discussion. We can talk equality, we can talk political equality, all we want, but until we address that place of fear, nothing gets healed. This is just bureaucracy, but that resistance to the other. And it's very tempting to think that we're somehow, because we showed up to this today, we're free of that and we wish everybody else were smart like us. And my point of view, at least for the next hour, and I invite you to join me, is that we're all filled with homophobia. I'm filled with homophobia, just like I do believe we are all filled with sexism and racism and ageism and ableism. And if we pretend that we're not, we have no chance whatsoever of any kind of growth at all. I'm only here to talk about a prejudice, and homophobia shares a lot with other prejudices in our culture. There are similarities between homophobia and sexism and ageism and racism, also some profound differences. But one similarity that homophobia shares with any other prejudice out there is that we learn it at the same time we learn all the others. And when is that? Anybody? Childhood. How old are you, would you say you are, when you first get homophobic ideas? 4, 5, 2? I'm with you. I think maybe even when we're pre-verbal, when we're infants, we're picking up information from our families about people that we perceive to be different from ourselves, obviously without even the language to identify it. But we'll often hear, well, you don't want to be a sissy, do you? Stop crying. We may not even know what that is, but we get it right away that that's not cool and that's not me. So I would suggest that's homophobia, starting at a very early age. A unique aspect about LGBT people as a minority population, though, is that largely we're an invisible population. You can't tell who's gay by looking at them. In the same way you can generally tell how old somebody is, you can generally tell if someone's a man or a woman, you can generally tell if someone has a particular racial or ethnic heritage. Now, collectively, we're very visible out there in the culture, more than ever in history. There's all kinds of political issues out there about marriage equality, employment non-discrimination. There are tons of TV shows, celebrities out there now, professional football players, that there's this collective visibility. Individually, we still remain largely invisible. And just to illustrate the truth of that, I'm sure you're all familiar with the term coming out of the closet. When you think about it for a moment, if it were so easy to tell who's gay by looking at them, there'd be no such thing as coming out. It would be a redundant exercise. Like, I've never had to come out as a white man before. It was never a secret I had to keep. I hope you'll still be friends with me when I tell you my secret. I'm really white. I know everybody in here already figured that out in a way that maybe you did or didn't, that I'm also a gay man. So today is about becoming visible in a more personal kind of way. In order to do that, I ask a few things of you. This is going to be a dialogue. It's not going to just be me flapping my trap up here. I invite you to be as open and honest with me as you're willing to be. You do not have to worry about hurting my feelings or sounding politically incorrect or anything like that. This discussion is only valuable to the degree you're willing to be honest with yourselves and honest with me. I also want you to bear in mind that I'm just one white, middle-class, middle-aged gay man. And I cannot speak for the whole LGBT community any more than any one of you could speak to any community to which you belong. So be cautious of generalizations you might be tempted to make based on something I say from my personal experience. The last piece is the trickiest. I've already kind of touched on a little bit. Very tempting to think that this is somebody else's issue, that I don't have any homophobia, that I'm not prejudiced at all. For instance, a show of hands, how many racists are there here today? Racists. A few brave hands, and I appreciate that, thank you. And I know it's not an easy thing, and the hand is pretty timid getting up there, I must say. And who wants to own that label? It's an ugly word. We hear people like Donald Sterling, I'm not a racist. By what definition? I mean, nobody's out there proudly saying, we could have a Klansman up here saying, no, I'm not a racist, I love everybody kind of thing. And I've heard that. But you still, today, 2014, you meet a tall African-American man, what do you assume he's good at? We all knew the answer to that. Now, that's a racial stereotype, maybe not so hurtful, but it fuels racism just like any other. An Asian student at Stanford or MIT at UCLA, what are they studying? Math or science? We all knew the answer to that. I've asked that question thousands of times all over Los Angeles. I've even done these kinds of engagements in Boise, Idaho. Everybody knows the answer to that. Nobody's ever said, Asian student at UCLA, art history, modern dance. No, it's engineering, math, science. These are racial stereotypes, and they fuel our capacity and urge to put people in little boxes and see them as two-dimensional. In a similar way, it might be tempting to think I don't have any homophobia myself because my best friend is gay, or I'm bisexual myself, or my favorite aunt was a lesbian, so I don't have that. My dad does. I wish he were here to hear this today. As tempting as it is to think that, please leave the idea outside the door and consider that we're all homophobic. And I also invite you to consider that homophobia just doesn't have to look like bullying or gay bashing or telling a fag joke or laughing at one. It's as subtle as assuming everybody else is straight, unless they fit some kind of stereotype. It's as subtle as asking a little boy who maybe just started kindergarten, you got a little girlfriend at school? You might think that's a very natural question to ask that little boy. As that little boy, every time that question was posed to me, I experienced it as homophobia because no, I never did have a crush on a little girl. I had a crush on a little boy. How many times do you suppose I got that question posed to me? Is there a little boy at school you like in that extra special way? So every time it was posed, the shame increased. So I invite us to keep that in our reflection today. I'm going to ask you to engage with me in an exercise. Everybody can hear me, I hope. I need your help in creating a list of everything that you've heard about gay folks, positive as well as negative things. I'm not going to ask you what you believe. I'm asking you what you've heard. What have you heard growing up? What have you heard? Oh, that's not solid down there. Okay. What have you heard growing up? What have you heard in school? What have you heard in your families? What have you heard in your places of worship? What have you seen on TV? Things like, how can you tell who's gay? Even though I said we're invisible, we all do it. You're at the mall, you're at the beach. She looked like a lesbian to me. What would make us say that? What jobs have you heard that we have or don't have? What causes somebody to be gay? What religious ideas have you heard about being gay? What about the families we come from? What the families we create? Political ideas? Anything at all that you've heard about gay folks, positive or negative? Yes?
Gay men are wonderful interior designers.
Okay, interior designers. I'm going to just do shorthand. And we're going to do origami after class. So this is, okay, what else? Yes? It's a choice. What else? Promiscuous. Is that men or women when you thought that?
Mostly men, but not necessarily.
Okay. Men. What else? Taboo? Is that the game or it's taboo? I love that. Yes?
It's a phase.
It's a phase. What else?
There's a reason we have AIDS.
AIDS.
If you just found the right.
Okay, the right partner of the opposite sex. What else?
They're dominating mothers.
Dominating mothers, that's a cause?
Yeah.
What other things might cause somebody to be gay that you heard? Yeah,
People have been sexually abused.
sexually abused.
Absent father.
Absent father.
Gay men are pedophiles.
Father, okay, pedophiles.
Anti-religious.
We are anti-religious or what?
There's a religious overtone or undertone.
Can you say more about it? What your,
Different religious conventions, there's slant on homosexuality.
there's,
That is wrong.
so are you saying religions condemn gay folks? Or what?
Yeah.
Or can? Okay.
Some religions are more accepting.
Okay. We're having an audio-visual. Oh, it's my fault. Okay, well, I'll keep going. So I'll just put the religion piece.
Confusion. It's a sin.
It's a sin. And confusion, where should I write that? Let me see. That was a little riff on confusion. Okay, yes.
We're going to raise gay kids.
We're going to raise gay kids. indeed. Okay, thank you. Is that better? Can we all hear me now? Yes. They do. You grow out of it in college. Okay. Okay. Effeminate or butch?
Equipped with gaydar.
Gaydar. Can or shouldn't? I couldn't hear the. Should not. And why shouldn't we? Because we'll raise them to be gay? Is that the connection there? Okay. What else? Yeah. Good parents. Any jobs you think about gay folks having, or is everybody an interior designer? Hairdressers. Okay. Is that men or women that are hairdressers? Men. Do lesbians work? What? Gym teachers. Okay. Or truck drivers. Oh, there's a choice. Okay. If you can't throw or catch, you can drive. Yeah.
Women college coaches, except Penn State.
Okay. Well, that sort of goes in the gym teacher category, but we probably don't have room to list every sport or college. Yes? Fashion designer. How about terms you've heard used to describe gay folks? And this is where it gets maybe a little uncomfortable, but I speak to fifth graders. I don't think you're going to come up with something. I couldn't spell most of these words in Farsi. Fashion design. Fabulous. Yes.
Threat to traditional marriage or conservative traditional ideals.
Okay, threaten to ideals. Okay. Yeah. Flaming. Queen.
Very kind and caring.
Kind and caring. Yes. Butch. I think we have femme or butch, effeminate or butch up there. Yeah. 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 Diseased.
Flamboyant.
Flamboyant. Queer. Yes. Happy. We're almost out of room. Any last things we want to get up there? Unholy.
Gay men love to shop.
Love to shop. Faggot.
Lesbians are just plain hard to get.
Okay, faggot. Hard to get.
Gay men are a girl's best friend.
Hard to get. Okay. Good best friend or an accessory. One last one. Anybody? Anything you want to get up there? Yeah. Speak in a feminine tone. Okay. Okay. I'm going to try to read this, what you came up with, and just let it kind of wash over you. Gay men are interior designers. It's a choice to be gay. Gay men tend to be promiscuous. It's taboo. It's a phase. Gay men make good best friends. For women, they're an accessory. They're responsible for AIDS. They speak in an effeminate tone. They just haven't met somebody right from the opposite sex. They maybe are gay because they had a dominant mother, or that there was sexual abuse, or an absent father. Gay men are pedophiles. There's a religious piece here that it's seen as sinful or unholy. They're confused. I can't, something girly. Maybe they speak in a girly way. They're faggots. The lesbians are playing hard to get. They'll grow out of it in college. You can either be effeminate or butch. They come equipped with gaydar. They shouldn't have kids, but they can be good because they'll raise gay kids. I think that's what that was. But they make good parents. Gay men are hairdressers. Women are gym teachers or truck drivers or coaches. Gay men are fashion designers. They're fabulous. They threaten conservative ideals and values. They're flaming queers. They are kind and caring. They are, I can't read my writing there, flamboyant. they're queer. And do you know I got penmanship medals. It's pathetic. They don't even teach cursive anymore in LAUSD. It's pitiful, I know. Oh, they're diseased. I don't want to forget that. They're queer. They're happy. They are unholy. I already said that. And they love to shop. Thank you. Okay. And that's not to make you feel bad. Or now I better think about something nice to say about gay folks, or Michael's going to have his feelings hurt. That's to give you a picture of homophobia. That's what it looks like. And I don't think anybody here heard anything new today, did you? We could probably go on and on and on. That's a picture of homophobia. To pretend like that doesn't affect the way that you view people like me is to deceive yourself. The first time I did this exercise over 20 years ago, I was shocked. It was like, just to see it in black and white, it was like, oh my God, that's what I have been carrying around. And this is a positive, affirming group. So I just want that to soak in a little bit. That's a picture of homophobia. It also speaks to another issue that's sort of hinted at. Let me see if I got a better color here. The idea of choice, that it's a choice to be gay. There are those that would say that. There are gay folks that would say that. I'm not one that would say we can choose our sexual orientation, but, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, but choice also implies there's a lot of fear about like why we shouldn't have kids because we'll raise them to be gay. I think that got up here, we'll raise them to be gay. That this idea that we can recruit people. GLIDE as an organization over the years, even in Los Angeles, has had a hard time getting into certain schools and school districts because there's a fear that we must be out there to recruit young new gays and lesbians for tomorrow. It's a preposterous idea. I'm not here to recruit anybody to anything, except to maybe think a little bit. And even if I were here to recruit people to be gay, this would be my recruitment poster. This is what I've got to offer. You want to sign up? Don't you want to be thought to be diseased and unholy and sinful and going to hell and all the rest? But maybe you're nice? Probably not a club anybody wants to join right away. The whole idea that anyone's sexual orientation can be recruited effectively is a lie. And that everybody in this room has been recruited. I've been recruited since the day I was born to be straight. Every image I saw on TV, in song lyrics, read in books. What's the first book you read? Who is Dick with? Jane. Right off the get-go. In 4th grade, we had square dancing. I don't know if they do that anymore. And they sure didn't call it Recruiting Heterosexual Day. But that's what we were doing. We were teaching boys and girls how to dance in these closed positions in pre-adolescent, pre-sexual years. We didn't have boys dancing with boys. We could have 2 girls together if there weren't enough boys to go around, but you couldn't have 2 boys together. I was raised to be straight. From the time I was this high, I heard, when you grow up and marry a nice young woman. And there was a time, many years, I would have signed up if I could have. Yep, I want to join that club. It's too painful to be different. So how could it possibly work in reverse, where this is the benefits package you get for being gay? You don't remotely identify as gay, but somehow having a conversation with me is going to want to make you take on all this. It doesn't make much sense. I'm going to talk about some of the other ideas in this list, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this list has shaped my life, tell you my story a little bit, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions. The overwhelming thing that comes up every time I do this exercise is how much sexism is interwoven with homophobia. So much so that I think if we didn't have such a thing as sexism, we wouldn't have such a thing as homophobia. So much of this is you're either feminine or butch. And how do we tell who's gay? Well, if a man's a hairdresser or if he's an interior designer, he must be gay. If a woman is a gym teacher, a coach, or a truck driver. Man might be a fashion designer. A man talks in a feminine way. A lot of this has to do with gender conformity, that we see in this binary kind of way. You're either this or you're that. And that's sexism, plain and simple. Those of us that grew up, it looks like this is a pretty somewhat homogenous group of folks that maybe grew up in the United States. This is a very individualistic culture. We consider that a foundational value. All cultures in the world aren't like that, but we like to think rights of the individual are sacred. When it comes to gender expression, we really don't mean it at all. We've got very rigid ideas about this is how boys behave and girls behave, and men and women respectively. Starts before we're born. If you don't believe me, the next time you go to Walmart or CVS or anywhere they sell greeting cards, go take a look at the greeting cards for new parents. And look at how much information is on that card based on the gender of that baby. If somebody's having a baby girl, what color's the card? Guaranteed. And a boy, what color? What's on the front of the card if it's a boy? Sports. Welcome to the world, slugger. Like we know something about that boy. We don't know a thing about the boy. What's the very first question you even ask someone who had a baby? Boy or girl? Not is the mom okay? Delivery okay? Everybody healthy? What did you have? I need to know. I need to know how to think about it, how to talk about it, what pronouns to use, what color toys to buy, what kinds of toys to buy. And yet, have you ever caught yourself out in public and there's a baby wrapped up in a dangerously ambiguous yellow blanket? And somebody takes a leap of faith, goes up to that baby, says, "Oh, what a beautiful little girl she is. What a heartbreaker she's going to be. What's her name? John." "Oh, what a tough guy. What a dude. What a slugger." And we kind of back away because we just insulted that little boy by thinking he was like a girl. We still consider it worse to be like a girl than to be like a boy. What's the worst thing you can be if you're in 8th grade in Los Angeles today and you throw the ball like a girl? What's the word would you suppose? Sissy's kind of an archaic word. Any other guesses of what the word might be?
B word, P word.
Not even the B word or the P word. I think you might be surprised. The ultimate way to put somebody down in 8th grade? You girl. What's that say to the women in this room, that the worst thing a boy could be is somebody like you are? What does it say to the men in this room, who I presume have women in your lives that you love, respect, and admire? The worst thing you can be is somebody like that woman is. Throwing like a girl works for 50% of the population. Isn't that amazing? Get through life just fine throwing like a girl. And yet it's the ultimate way to put down a boy. On the flip side, if a girl acts like a boy, she's good at sports, what do we call her? Tomboy. She can be teased, but she can be cool. She's stepping up in class. We can hear parents very proud of their tomboy girls. Did you see my girl? She beat him up. She kicked that goal in soccer. When's the last time you heard a parent say, "You should see how many pirouettes my son did at the ballet recital. I'm so proud of that kid. I took him to see Lion King and he cried like a baby. The kid's so sensitive. I just love that." We kind of titter because we think, why would we praise a boy for qualities like compassion, tenderheartedness, artistic talent? Those are feminine traits. They're worth less in our culture. That's sexism, pure and simple, and it's a huge piece of homophobia. Some of the causes you came up with. How did we get to be gay? Maybe you just haven't met somebody of the opposite sex. Maybe you had a domineering mother. Maybe you were abused sexually. Maybe your father wasn't around. Interesting, none of these are very neutral. They all apply, what went wrong to make you gay? Something must have happened. We've already pathologized being gay. It's not just, your parents were just lucky, out came a little gay kid. No, we've made it something wrong. And the most insidious one is this idea of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse of children is an epidemic in this culture by any measure. LA Unified School District, I think, has 800,000 students in it. This 1 in 3 girls, by the time she graduates, is going to be a survivor of sexual assault. 1 in 5 boys. Those statistics have been repeated around the country. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys, by the time they're 18, is going to have survived some kind of sexual assault by an adult. That's a horrifying statistic. Sexual assault on children causes all kinds of lifetime issues, self-esteem, respect, trust, all the rest. One thing it doesn't do is change somebody's sexual orientation. If it did, 1 in 3 women out there would be lesbian. 1 in 5 men would be gay. It's preposterous. There aren't that many gay lesbian people. On the flip side of it, it's often thought that gay men become pedophiles because probably they were assaulted as children, so they become this. Widely held belief. That idea is so strong it gets into our public policy. If I went home on Sunday and decided, you know what, I need another volunteer activity, I want to go be a Boy Scout leader, I would not be acceptable as a Boy Scout leader. Some of the fear, as an out gay man, some of the fear is I'm going to molest children. According to the FBI, also the LAPD, these are 2 groups that you don't see marching in too many gay pride parades. They have studied who molests children. 95 to 97% of child molesters fit into one category. What is it? Straight what? Straight men, 97 out of 100 times, are the ones who are going to be molesting children. And that is regardless of the gender of their victim. If a man molests a little boy, it doesn't make him gay, it makes him a child molester. This is a crime of violence and power, has nothing to do with adult sexuality. This is how these men identify themselves in their adult relationships. So who are we hurting by perpetrating that notion that gay men shouldn't be around children, or that because they're pedophiles? Who are we hurting by promoting that idea? The kids. Yeah, you might hurt my feelings a little bit, but I'll survive. But we're taking the eye off the ball on who is assaulting our children, and 80% of the time it's somebody who's in a relationship with the mom. It's dad, it's stepdad, it's boyfriend, it's grandpa, it's uncle, it's big brother. It's not the two gay guys who just bought the house down the street as a fixer-upper. So I invite you to keep that in mind. I also want to talk about the difference between one's behavior and one's orientation. Talked earlier about choice, and a lot of the movement that I would say is maybe anti-gay or anti-equality toward the LGBT community is hinges on the idea that this is a behavior. Behavior is a choice, and therefore you can choose something else, and because it's a choice, that's why I'm not going to grant you any kind of equality, or I'm going to fight you every step of the way. Behavior is what you do. Your orientation is who you are. Whether I have sex my whole life or not, I'm always going to be a gay man. It doesn't appear that anybody's having sex right now at the moment. Has your sexual orientation disappeared for this hour? Does it only exist when you're engaging in some kind of behavior? No. And does your behavior, is it always congruent? There are some people that say, I will hear, and maybe some people here think, you know what, I just don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't announce what I do in my bedroom. Why do you have to announce what you do in yours? That is totally indicative of the idea that being gay is all about what does or doesn't happen in my bedroom. Has everything to do with everything else. After 36 years with Scott, believe me, what keeps us together is not about what does or doesn't happen in one's bedroom. It's about all the things that keep any couple together. Caring about one another. Who do you want to save your money with to go on that trip with? Who's on your insurance? Who do you want standing by your side at the best time of your life or the worst time of your life? Whose phone calls do you get at work? Who do you bring to the holiday office party? All of those things. If I were out in public and I was, I heard some woman say, oh, don't put mushrooms on my pizza, my husband doesn't like that. Would it be appropriate for me to say, well, why do I need to know what goes on in your bedroom? All she did was tell me that her husband doesn't like mushrooms on her pizza. It affects all kinds of things. Sexual expression is a very narrow slice of how any sexual orientation gets expressed. And it isn't always congruent. Can you be gay and never have sex in your whole life with the same sex? Absolutely. We see kids all the time. Interestingly enough, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But there are plenty of straight people who have engaged in gay sex, maybe experimented, explored, or rebelled against their parents. It does not make them gay. It does not make them bisexual. It makes them straight people engaging in a particular behavior. Plenty of gay people get married to the opposite sex, have kids, grandkids, come out in their 70s. We've had glide speakers who have done that. Does that mean they were straight and then became gay? No, they were always gay people who lived out their life acting like a straight person. It didn't make them bisexual, it made them a gay person playing a role. Your sexual orientation, my gayness has to do with who I am in here. Has very little to do with my behavior, how I talk, how I walk, what does or doesn't happen in my bedroom. So I invite you to keep those ideas separate, behavior and orientation. The last piece is the religious piece, and there's a lot of religious ideas fuel homophobia, the idea that it's unholy and that it's a sin, and there's some religious convictions against it. Not all, but some. Where do most of those ideas come from? Any particular text? Bible. More accurately, the Hebrew Bible, what Christians would call the Old Testament. A lot of folks will hold up the Old Testament and say it says right here, and this is why I can't support equality for you. Interestingly enough, the Hebrew Bible is the foundation, I'm sure you're aware, for three of the world's great religions. It's a foundation, obviously, for Judaism. It's a foundation for Christianity. It's also the foundation for Islam. Even at that, 50% of the world's population does not follow one of those Abrahamic religions of Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. That means 50% of the world doesn't know or care about Moses, Jesus, or Moses, and Mohammed, Jesus, or Moses. I'm not here to say who's right or wrong, only to say that what's true for one isn't true for everybody. Some of those major world religions have no tenets or precepts against homosexuality whatsoever. Buddhism, for instance, in its sacred texts, has no precepts against it. In our own country, in Native American tradition, in some tribes, it's considered an elevated status. There's something called a two-spirited being, one who has both the male and female in the same body. Someone we might call transgender or gay. That person is seen as having a gift, And they're elevated to shamans because they're not limited by this narrow perspective of one gender or another. You're either butch or femme, one or the other, binary. In some tribes, I hear there are 6 genders. We get very binary. Well, what are you? Are you a boy? Are you a girl? Are you gay? Are you straight? Sexuality, gender expression is very fluid. If we go back to those Abrahamic religions, in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, people will often quote the book of Leviticus and say, a man shall not lie with a man as he would a woman. It's an abomination. He should be put to death. It says that. And say, that's why I cannot support equality for you. Interestingly enough, anybody know the punishment for insulting your parents? Death by stoning. Anybody here ever sass back their parents? I don't think you should be put to death for it. It's not very nice. But I think you should be here. I think the room would be empty if we followed that one. Touching the skin of a dead pig, Super Bowl, is an abomination. Men, shaving. Anybody got a tattoo, pierced anything? I don't need to see it. That's an abomination, piercing the skin for a decorative purpose. Now, I'm not here to say who's right or wrong about that, but the minute we start to say, well, God didn't mean this, but he meant this over here, we're doing some picking and choosing. If we're looking at the Christian tradition, the New Testament, what did Jesus have to say? Yes? Love everyone as I have loved you. Yeah, not a thing about being gay. Homosexuality wasn't even a word till the 19th century when a German coined it. So if your Bible even has the word homosexual in it, somebody's already done some fancy translation. We don't even have agreement in our culture on who a Christian is. We had a presidential election a few years ago. Are Mormons really Christians? I don't know. Do you know? Mormons feel like they're Christians. Catholics don't think this Protestant is a true Christian, doesn't think this is evangelical is a true Christian, yet they all feel like they're Christian. The central value to virtually every major world faith tradition is the same. Comes down to one 4-letter word, begins with L. What is it? Love. Nothing remotely loving about this list. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how this list shaped my life, and then we'll open it up. I am 59 years old. I grew up in Long Beach, California, and I was born gay. Interestingly enough, that wasn't a cause that came up here. Just that's the way it came in the world. I don't know if it's genetic hormones, but as early as I can remember, age 4, I knew that I was different. I knew I had these feelings. And I also didn't have a word for it, and I didn't know there was anybody else like me. But I knew I had a crush on Jimmy Pascal, who was the cutest kid in kindergarten, and I wanted to sit next to him on the lunch benches and ride home with him on the school bus. But I also knew somehow that wasn't okay, because I was also a sissy, and I really knew that wasn't okay, so I just better shut up about it. And I got a word for my difference when I was about 13. I was having a talk with my mom about Catholic priests. I had been raised a Catholic. As I'm sure all of you know, Catholic priests make a vow of celibacy. And my mom was saying she didn't understand how so many men could make a promise like that. A lot of them must be homosexual. There's that word. Wow, what's that word mean, Mom? And when she explained it to me, that's when the lights went on. Oh, that's what I am. But that was not an oh boy moment. That was an oh God, this can't be true moment, because I heard the disgust in my own mother's voice as she described me to myself, not realizing she's talking about her own boy. That's how the home can be a more treacherous place than school, and that invisibility plays out in often very painful ways. So I learned to hate myself in a whole new way at that point in time, and which is very common for a lot of kids questioning their gender and sexual orientation. Becomes self-destructive behavior, drug and alcohol abuse, dropping out of school. One that might seem counterintuitive. If you're a young lesbian, what's the best way to prove to the world you're straight? Sleep around. Teen lesbians in LA Unified School District are twice as likely to get pregnant than straight girls. 4 times more likely to have multiple pregnancies as teenagers. Because they love sex with guys so much? Because they want to be moms so badly? Or because of homophobia? We might think, well, that's not my issue because there's nobody in my family. Phew, it's one less thing I have to worry about. Who's going to take care of those kids? Who's going to love them and get them an education and health care and all the rest? It becomes everybody's problem. The most painful way this self-hatred gets expressed is suicide attempts. Kids questioning are up to 8 times more likely to take their own lives or attempt to take their own lives as kids who are not. And all of you have the power to change that. Because if somebody's considering harming themselves and they tell one person, particularly the young people in this room, you have much more power than I do. If somebody at your age is considering hurting themselves and they tell one person, their chances of following through drop precipitously. All of you can be that one person. If they've heard you tell a fag joke, if they've heard you laugh at a fag joke, do you become that person? No, that door gets shut. So that's how things change. But this suicide attempt, I didn't attempt suicide myself literally, but I had a very rude awakening to this statistic a number of years ago. When I began as an intern with Jackie, I was assigned to the neurosurgery and trauma unit at UCLA. And in the neuro ICU, there was a young man, 11 years old, who shot himself in the head. And he only lived a couple of days on life support. I obviously didn't get to talk to him, but I got to spend time with his parents. And it was real clear to me the young man was wrestling with being gay, and nobody was talking about it. But I heard the stories of how he was teased nonstop because he couldn't throw and he couldn't catch and he liked to read and he wore these big glasses. He paid another kid $20 to have lunch with him at school so he wouldn't have to eat alone and have other kids throw food at him. You should have seen the handmade card his 6th grade class made for him on the windowsill. Get well, dude. You're really a cool guy. Sorry I teased you. Get well from a gunshot wound to the head. We've all failed that young man because the world is still not a safe place for everybody to just be who they are. And that, sadly, is a story that plays out again and again if we're aware of it in the news. Every couple of months you read about another kid. As I said earlier, I did not attempt suicide literally, but symbolically I've kind of considered it. It was the mid-'60s. There was no Ellen on TV, there was no Glee, there was no Elton John out there throwing big gala benefits. It was considered a mental illness, officially, and it was against the law. Who was I going to tell? So in my 13-year-old mind, I already knew what my mom thought about it. I thought in my own 13-year-old mind, I know when I get old enough, I'll go away to college, I'll get a sex change operation. The movie Christine Jorgensen's story had just come out. She was a transgender woman. I don't know if she's still alive or not, but it was this big, titillating sensation. I thought, oh, that I can do. But how am I going to pull that off? I never felt like a girl. I never wanted to be a girl. I just thought that was the way I could accommodate everybody's discomfort with me. I'll disappear and commit suicide to the sissy boy. And I'll rearrange my body, come back to somebody else, now you'll leave me alone. Thank God that didn't happen. But I was middle school, high school, that's what I thought about. How will I pull that off? I fell in love the first time when I was 17. And his name was Bob. And some people would say that's when you came out. It's kind of a joke to me to say, when did you come out, as if it's a one-time event. Coming out is something we do our entire lives. I'm coming out to you today. And every time there can be tension and fear about will I be accepted, respected, and will I be safe. The experience with Bob I would not call a coming out experience because my own internalized homophobia. You know, it's not like gay people are bussed in when they're 18 and then they come in without all of this baggage. We've got all this too. And we've got a very well-oiled self-hatred machine going on. So we're believing this about ourselves. And I lived with that shame. I earlier invited you to consider the difference between behavior and orientation. I did that with Bob. When that relationship was over and I thought I was going to die and nobody will ever love me again, and I couldn't tell anybody that's what being in the closet is like. You remember your first love, your first crush? What's the first thing you want to do? Call up a best friend. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Keep it to yourself and put a smile on your face. Look good. Yeah, things are great. I was dying inside, and I thought in my own mind, if I just don't ever do this again, I won't be gay. Whether I ever do it again or not, the rest of my life, I'm always going to be a gay man. So I don't see that as coming out. To me, coming out is revealing who you are. I wasn't doing that. Coming out is one thing, is just telling somebody you're gay. Healing, that's a whole other story. They're parallel paths, but they're not the same. Healing began for me, I was 21, I came out to my sister, and she came out to me at the same time. She was 27, I was 21. She was married to a man, but she'd fallen in love with her best friend, who was a woman named Jerry. We were coming home from a family wedding, and my sister was driving. She started crying out of the clear blue. I didn't know what was going on, and she spits it out. Would you think it'd be terrible if I told you? I think I'm in love with Jerry. And I just said, sister, have I got a story for you? And when I got that out and she said, I still love you, you're still my brother, that's when I knew, okay, it's going to be okay. There's one person who knows. And it's a lifelong journey of that. Coming out to mom is another story. Having trained hundreds of Glide speakers over the years, I've heard hundreds of stories. Often mom is the last to be told, even though she may have been the first to know. Because you stand the most to lose there. If your mom rejects you, you're pretty lost. So with my mom, I didn't have the guts to tell her right out, so I thought I'd write her a letter. And then I thought that seemed kind of cold to send her the letter, so I gave her the letter in person, and she sat and read it, and I watched her read it. I thought I was going to die. It was the longest minute in my life. And she started to cry right away and said, "I love you anyway. I guess I always knew. I never wanted to face it, and just don't bring anybody home." Hey, I was so glad I got it out. I didn't have anybody to bring home anyway. Thought that went pretty well. Pay attention to that first line, though. It's a direct quote. March 16th, 1978, because I wrote it down in my journal. I love you anyway. I love you even though. I don't want to be loved even though. I don't think any of us deserve to be loved in spite of who we are. I want to be loved because of. My gayness is a gift. It is not something to apologize for, to be accommodated, to be tolerated. It's a gift. It's made me who I am. I wouldn't be a chaplain if I weren't a gay man. I wouldn't be as good a one as I am if I weren't a gay man. I've had the experience of watching hundreds of my gay brothers die grisly deaths from AIDS. I'm very well suited to the questions that come up at the end of a person's life when there aren't any easy answers. Here, just pray this prayer, it'll be okay. It's not going to be okay. It's going to be awful. But I'm here. I'm well suited to that because my experience as a gay man, not something to apologize for. As Jackie told you, I married Scott last year legally after 36 years of being together. And I want to tell you a little story about the difference between political equality and cultural equality. I think we all know about political equality, been fighting that battle for years. It's in the papers, being able to serve openly in the military, marriage equality. We still don't have employee non-discrimination. In 30 states, you can still be, the majority of states, you can still be fired based on your sexual orientation with no recourse in the law whatsoever to fight that. That's political equality. Here's an example of cultural equality, a little harder to tease apart. About 7, 8 years ago, Scott had a terrible accident at home. And still gets me. He had injured his eye very badly. I went to pick up this gigantic fax printer copier combo that's the size of a Barcalounger. It was in the back of the car, and I came home and said, "Scott, can you help me get out of the car?" We did one of those, I'll push it to the end of the seat, you balance it there, I'll come around the car, we'll get it, we'll carry it in. He says, no, I got it. He's in front of me, and I will regret to the day I die that I didn't say stop, because I knew he wasn't strong enough to carry it up the stairs and set it down. And he tripped over the front step, and he dropped the copier. And we have this carving of a bird that we bought in Africa many years ago that has spikes on it in the hallway. And one of those spikes went right into his left eye. And his eye looked like hamburger, and he said, "I can't see." So I drove him to Cedars, a big hospital nearby, and get to the emergency room. It's maybe 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And he didn't get into his first of 7 surgeries so far until 11:30 that night. They had to find just the right surgeon to do that surgery, and he couldn't have so much of it as an aspirin all day long because of pain. We finally meet the surgeon, and it's pretty clear he's not too cool with the gay thing. I think that's fine. I don't need to do a glide engagement here. I need him to be a good surgeon. But I deluded myself. I did need him to get it that we are a family, because he was telling us horrible things that could happen in the surgery. There could be brain damage. There could be something called sympathetic blindness, where his good eye would just go bad. Here, sign here that you've been authorized consent. Well, that surgery went on for 4 or 5 hours. Jackie was there for part of the time. My sister was sitting with me when the surgeon finally came out of the OR. This is maybe 3 in the morning. I was there since 9 in the morning. I had one good nerve left. The surgeon would only look at my sister. It might sound like a small thing, and I wish I'd had the presence of mind to say, "Jack, look at me. I'm the one who needs this information." And it might be a small thing, but he was just like, this can't be a family. Please, God, let there be a woman there that I can focus and give this information to. I don't think the guy's an asshole. I don't think he's a homophobic jerk. I don't think he meant to hurt me. But he intensified my suffering immensely by his ignorance and his unwillingness to be aware that there are all kinds of families out there. And no law or regulation or policy is ever going to make him look at me or treat me with that kind of kindness that he would if I had been a woman and it was a man in surgery. And that's what this discussion is about today, is that cultural equality. I'm inviting you to consider, where are those pockets within me that still feel a little uncomfortable with that woman who just would look better if she'd wear some makeup or lose some weight? And why does that man need to talk with his hands? And why, if they just didn't act that way? If somebody's making me feel uncomfortable with their appearance or their behavior, whose homework is it to change? Mine or theirs? Mine, absolutely. And if all of us left today with even that message, to be aware, and instead of saying, oh, I'm shocked I had this homophobic or racist thought, to say, that's where it is, okay. I've had my homophobia thrown in my face just recently, 2 months ago, whenever the Super Bowl was on. I had bought new tires for my car. And I went into the shop, and this cute, hunky guy who's selling tires comes up, and he's just being a salesman, right? Y'all ready for the Super Bowl? I didn't even know who's playing. I don't care. And you want to go, well, I'm gay. I mean, you don't know. What do you say? Well, I'm not really into sports. It's not a big deal if you're not carrying that kind of internalized homophobia. Now, is he going to jack up my price? And I wasn't really worried about that. But there's that moment of, how do I answer, are you ready for the Super Bowl? 15 years ago or so is another illustration of internalized homophobia. I was speaking at Hamilton High School in West LA, doing an engagement just like this. And I'm asking the audience, how can you tell if somebody's gay? And a kid says to me, I'd know you were gay anywhere. Oh, really? How? He says, well, look at you. You talk with your hands and your shirt's all ironed and it's tucked in and everything. And for the rest of the class, my hands went in my pockets. I tried to speak a little more low. And the end of the engagement, this really wonderful young woman said, what's it like for you to do these engagements over and over again and hear a lot of hateful stuff? And I said, what a sensitive question, thank you. I said, sometimes it's hard, I got to admit, but I get kind of used to it. I said, but today was a great day because I got my feelings hurt by that young man who pegged me as gay, because he showed me where my homophobia is. I don't want him to apologize. The very next day I spoke at a middle school, and a kid said to me, I'd never know you were gay, mister. And I heard thank you start to come out of my mouth. Like I should feel flattered to pass for whatever this 14-year-old twerp's idea of masculine or butch or straight looks like. That's alive and well within me. So I would like all of us to make that be our homework and not say, gee, I'm going to teach other people. I'm going to look at myself and say, why do I care what that woman's hair looks like, or that she behaves, or those two girls are kissing? Is it hurting me that somebody's living out their life? And for those of you that are parents, I just want to tell one other story, because my mom is 85, and she talks about the end of her life a lot. She's a lung cancer survivor. 13 years ago, before she went into surgery, we all went in one at a time, the 3 kids, to say goodbye. We didn't know if we're going to see her again, right? What did she say to me? I love you, and I'm sorry. For what, Mom? That I wasn't there for you all those years. I said, Mom, I'm so past that. I don't want you to carry any of that. I know she'll carry it, and she'll still ask me on occasion, did you really think I would have disowned you? And I can remember the moment I said yes. Because in 1969, my brother went on a motorcycle trip, and this is before cell phones and even payphones weren't too reliable. He went on a motorcycle trip in the desert, and he had called, and they lost the connection, that he was stranded somewhere, and his motorcycle broke down, and then we couldn't reach him. And my mom was going frantic around the house, and she said, he might have been picked up by some faggot. It still makes my blood run cold. That one sentence made me know I can never tell her my truth. All of us here have the power to make everybody else feel more comfortable in their own skin if we're willing to do it, including ourselves. So with the time we've got left, any questions you've got for me, that would be great.